Hello, guys. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Epic of Gilgamesh. This is just going to be a short video to introduce you a little bit to the story um, and Gilgamesh as an epic hero. I'm going to start with a little bit on where the story comes to us from. This is one of the oldest works known to mankind. It's definitely, as far as the works we're covering, it's the oldest one in our textbook. And it comes to us from the civilization of Mesopotamia. So, was Gilgamesh a real historical figure? There's been some debate about that. But here's what we do know. Obviously, it seems there was a real historical king Gilgamesh, and many of the events that the story describes have been proven by archaeologists to exist. For example, the Great Walls of Uruk that the story describes. Archaeologists have indeed found those ruins. So this tells us, just like with a lot of myths, there is at least some basis in fact for this story. Obviously, it's been very well embellished, but it's generally conceded that there probably was at some point a real historical Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was, I call it, the world's first bestseller. And it was originally written on a series of clay tablets that even now, when you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, that's why it's divided into tablets, because that was the form in which archaeologists first unearthed and found the story. And it goes back thousands of years. Just to give you a sense of how old it is, and it actually boggles the mind to think about how far back this story actually goes. But it predates the Hebrew Bible by probably about 2,000 years easily. And in fact, many students have discovered, and I think you will too, as we read through the Epic of Gilgamesh, there are a lot of similar stories and themes and motifs from some of the biblical stories that are also depicted in the Epic of Gilgamesh. One of those, for example, the story of the Great Flood. That event is also described in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and given that the two works come from pretty much the same part of the world, with just give or take of a few miles, it really gives some credence to some of the theories that are out there, which is that perhaps some of the works of the Bible actually derived originally from this work. And nobody's saying that for certain. It's just one of those food for thought kind of things that's interesting to think about. But here's where the story of Gilgamesh gets a little bit weird, okay? It was the most well-known work of the ancient world. It was passed among cultures. It was translated into many languages across the ancient world. It was, the New York Times bestseller of the ancient world. I mean, everybody knew this story. But then, for a period of several thousand years, it just completely disappeared. And scholars are still not sure exactly what happened there. Why did the work just disappear for so long? People forgot it even existed. It was not unearthed again until roughly about the mid 1800s. About 1850 thereabouts was when archaeologists discovered it again. And that's, as far as human history goes, that's still modern history. So that's how long the work was lost to us. And again, nobody really knows why it disappeared. It just did. It could be, a lot of times these things happen as a result of wars. One culture conquers another culture, and they bring about a concerted effort to ban their stories, so because that's one way one culture oppresses another, is by taking away their stories, taking away their religious beliefs. That's been true throughout history. So the Epic of Gilgamesh could very well have fallen victim to that. But once it was rediscovered, it was a very exciting find, because I think it really rekindled this idea of how far back in time mythology actually goes, right? Um, and just how influential this story has continued to be on modern myth. Now, it's a hero's journey story, um, but it deals with a very unlikely hero, and it could be debated whether Gilgamesh would fit most people's definition of a hero at all. The story establishes early on that he's not really a good person. He's a good king. Um, he does a good job of ruling his kingdom. The people of Uruk um, definitely have a lot of respect for Gilgamesh, but they they don't like him. Okay, you can respect somebody and not like them. They're two totally different things, right? And the reason they don't like him is because he abuses his power. For starters, the story tells us that he's hot-headed, he's arrogant, he has a lot of customs that the people don't agree with. Like every time a young woman in Europe gets married, he takes first rights to her. So in other words, instead of getting to spend her wedding night with her husband, every new bride has to spend her wedding night with Gilgamesh. He takes all the young girls of the village for his own harem. That's what the story means when it says Gilgamesh leaves no daughter to her mother. Great. Oh.